So I think that is everything. Concentrating on the order in which the crates were being loaded and verifying their contents had made the last few days pass quickly. With that chore largely accomplished, however, there was a lot of double checking, remembering and forgetting, analytical tasks which slowed the passing of time to a crawl and left everyone milling aimlessly about, too afraid to admit their boredom for fear that they would be burdened with a still more tedious chore. Only Dame Brienne seemed eager. It was uncharacteristic, citing her reception to the Queen's commands, and this added to everyone's disinterest in reporting to her. The recent events had elevated Tarakon's social status, but this had also thrust him into the inconvenient position of reporting status to the general regularly. Hearing the report made Brienne smile. She was eager for this moment. "One more thing, Tarakon. I have this for you." She held out a scroll, wound on two staves demarcating it as an announcement rather than a message, and sealed with the wax stamp of the armory tower of Domara. "I thought you had to surrender the stamp," Tarakon quipped as he broke the seal. "I did, but not before I made the best use of it." Her elation was burgeoning on awkward. Tarakon unfurled the rods and found he had to turn the document as it was written to accommodate being hung in display. He anticipated a typically lengthy introduction and needing a while to make out its contents, but the first few lines made that communication quite clear. "You're recommending me to the blacksmith?" "Absolutely." It was an honor that left Tarakon aghast. "I'm not even a captain yet." "Yes, you are." Silence passed between them, hers awaiting his reaction, and his awaiting her explanation. She accommodated. "Look, Tarakon, this move to Tarsam is the antithesis of everything we, the Order of Renalion, represent. When the Civil War ended and this bureaucracy was founded, the Order of Renalion was the Queen's personal guard. Osmara might be ready to flippantly relieve us as escort to the Queen, but I'm not ready to give that up. Now she's demanding that you remain here, and as far as I'm concerned, that makes you the anchor by which our order clings to its sacred duty. You are everything toward which I have worked. I do not know why black magic has fated you this chore, but I will be damned before I leave that task to a lieutenant. Take command, Captain Tarakon. And while I do not know how a promotion will ever be managed in the chaos to which you have been thrown, I am already satisfied that, should you need it, there it is, my recommendation to the Forge." "Thank you, General." It sounded obedient, but he meant it with more sincerity than his tone could muster. "Thank you, Captain. Your accomplishments are an honor to the Order of Renalion. Never forget that." "Yes, General. Thank you, General." The awkward silence between them returned, and begged for a close to their conversation. "You look like you are packed and ready for a journey, yet I know that this is not the case. What are you doing with your recess?" "I'm taking some time to visit my father. I was going to tell him about what happened, but..." He saluted with the scroll. "Now I'll have some news to share with him as well. You know, he had to pull some strings to enlist you in my brigade. When you see him, tell him I'm glad he did it." "He will be happy to hear that from you, ma'am." "All right, off with you. I need to get on this boat." She scowled at the vessel and her wretched plight it represented. "Goodbye, Brienne." "Tell me, Captain." She smiled. The Order of Renalion had loaded the last of their cargo in the ambient pre-dawn and had cast off just as the sun peeked over the horizon. While they sailed into the dawn, Tarakon kept the sun at his back. It was a warm winter day, pleasant for the hike he had before him. Morning light beat bright against the gables that lined his walk down the avenues of the town, and cast rosy tones across the clouds over the barren farm fields. The stone walls gave way to picket fences, which in turn gave way to hedgerows. Gravel roads grew ever more unkempt, until the trail's only trace was the furrows tread by carts. Hardy stalks of briar betrayed the untamed prairie hidden beneath the snow. The stalks grew taller and denser the further he walked, until at last he was in the forest, not far from his childhood home. It would be good to be back at his father's byre, to sleep in a bed rather than on one, to be able to add spice to his morning porridge before it boiled, rather than after it cooled. He missed the cooing of the hens and the perfume of the hay, and preferred those to the chattering in the barracks and the stink of tallow candles. Most of all, he would be glad to share a fireside story with his father. General Ritzian came from a family with a proud military history, and he prided himself on having achieved the highest rank of any of his ancestors. This detail was of prime importance in stories related to his stern grandmother, as he had eventually outranked her and could finally ignore her impossible standards. One of those standards had been the quality of witches and women he courted, and Tarakan's mother was one whom failed to live up to the scrutiny of the extended family. Ritzian was not dissuaded, however. She had persuaded him with her storytelling. Ritzian passed those stories on to Tarakan, and beside the axe, it was all Tarakan really had of his mother. Sharing stories with his father was how they could both remember her. Tarakan knew he would have to frame the tale so that its climax answered some previously posed problem. There was little time to think on it in the days following the attack on Damara, but he had settled on revealing to his father a detail which was still a secret at court. Osmara was having a baby, and potentially a daughter. He had practiced the story a couple times, making sure he had firmed the few points needed to elicit suspense and provide relief, the way human stories could. Now that he had settled on his telling, however, a second, potentially more compelling plot had begun. Should the story focus on the unusual upheavals in his rank? He was getting close to his father's house, and there was not much time left to rewrite the tale. The tree trunks moaned as they swayed in the wind. The branches sloughed off their coats of ice, thawed limbs snapped free, and the woods resounded with distant crashes. Seasonably early songbirds made short chirps and whistles, practicing to perfect the arpeggios of their upcoming spring performances. The forest was not perpetual, however. There was too much light between the distant trunks, too much pale blue sky between their silhouetted branches. Tarakan stepped beyond the dappled shadows cast from the canopy and out from the tree line. He was set at the edge of his father's field, in a shallow valley tucked between rolling hills. A barn with fieldstone walls was half buried in the slope. Above it was a house with broad eaves and a gingerbread-trimmed balcony. In the summer, the railing would overflow with bunched blossoms. Against gray sky and white snow, the house looked dark and worn. There was movement under the portico. The door opened, and a person stepped out. His frame was solid, angular. It was his father, trying to see whom had come to visit. Tarakan trudged through the snow, up the hill. Just shy of the stoop, Tarakan's shoulders sighed with relief as he dropped a heavy burlap sack to the ground. The thud startled the black and white speckled hens, and they clucked and fluttered out of the way. The soldier and the sage met in a firm, almost harsh embrace, then held each other at arm's length to be sure that the other was really there. The old warlock had already lost most of his caramel-colored hair, and what remained had been singed ashen by age. His grin was laugh-lined, and the skin framing his eyes was deeply furrowed. Tarakan realized it did not matter how he told his story. What mattered was that his father was still alive to hear it.